with SDGs, we have drawn action plan to implement SDGs in Bangladesh. We assigned each ministry with certain set of targets according to their rules of business. So they know which targets they will be implementing. And for that, they have developed action plan with intervention and projects they will go with in the next couple of years. At least they have to implement those actions by 7th five-year plan period, which will end in 2019-20. So they have detailed programs for that, action programs. Now the question is how from they will get the fund to implement that. That's a very pertinent question. So Bangladesh is growing around 7% GDP growth each year. So we visualize we will be increasing growth rate in Bangladesh. The most resources would come from domestic sources. Domestic both from public and private funding and from public-private joint funding, what we call PPPs. So of total funding, 85% would come from domestic sources, must come from domestic sources. And we emphasize domestic sources because of dwindling ODA support now we are facing. No problem for that. Country is getting richer every year, so we think Bangladesh can contribute, and countries like Bangladesh can have more contribution by themselves because these countries are getting growing richer. So what we devised in our financing strategy, I said already that we will provide 85% of financing from own and domestic sources by both public and private sources. And ODA and other FDIs would provide 15% of total fund required for implementation of SDGs in Bangladesh. So, and we estimated total cost of additional amount that would be required to implement SDGs. We estimated goal by goal, but while we estimate goal by goal, we have taken care of synchronization effect. We have synergies with one strategy, one goal to other. Some goals are will have positive impact, and if you attain certain targets, it will help to attain other targets. So that kind of multiplicity or synergy we have taken into consideration just to avoid duplication of estimation. So we have come up of total resource requirement which stands at $928 billion, which is 20% of cumulative GDP of Bangladesh. And yearly requirement is $66 billion, of which Bangladesh would provide $57 billion themselves. So the rest amount would come from around $9 billion, something around would be coming from FDIs and ODAs, grants and all this. So we have chalked out clear strategy where from funds should generate to implement SDGs. So Bangladesh will go for modernizing its tax system, will go for implementing its value-added tax system. And Bangladesh is trying to increase coverage of tax net, expanding the tax net in the country. So Bangladesh has to reform tax system and has to establish transparent accounting system. And Bangladesh is providing incentives to private sector in terms of providing subsidies when they export with the new markets. Bangladesh provide tax incentives. Those who spend more on social corporate responsibility, they have less corporate tax than the other companies who don't spend much on social corporate responsibility. This kind of ideas, thinking is going there to incentivize private sector to come up with more spending. private sector has to contribute, 42% of SDG implementation by re-energizing their business activities. So reform is necessary to cope up with the changing demand of resources for development, including SDGs. Management is important, of course, and to improve management, government is looking for improving economic governance. Meaning, what I want to say, government has some reform programs for public finance spending. I mean, establishing more accountability, establishing system of performance-based budget allocation. So that kind of thing is there, and in the budgeting, we attach importance on spending for poverty, spending for gender equality, and there is a system of accounting how much is relevant to poverty reduction, how much is relevant for how much is spending for gender, women empowerment. So how much is going for social sectors. That kind of performance-based classification is there to account for and to see how much is spending in which areas. So that is linked to management improvement. The lesson I can draw, or as I can take away from these discussions, what we have been holding over the last 2 days, 3 days, we need to look for innovative ways for financing SDGs. That innovative ways, including private sector, greater participation of private sector in financing. So that is the lesson, and we are able to know some of the best practices going in this region in terms of fund generation, in terms of budget management improvement, in terms of linking budget with planning. So this discussion, knowledge exchange discussion, I think was quite helpful for us to know the best practices each country is going with, So I learned some of the methods, I should say process, that can be replicated in Bangladesh, can be adopted in Bangladesh. So this was a very helpful knowledge exchange workshops we have had over the last couple of days. I think I would always emphasize on knowledge sharing, knowing best practices of each country to other, I mean, exchanging views on knowledge products. What we generate in each country must be shared in other countries in this region. That would incentivize one, and that would help one to learn from each other how to go with implementation of SDGs in a best way, in an effective manner, giving more value for the money.